But there is something else I really want you to be aware. That is, I want to ask you, what is the biggest trap for the Chinese to write academic papers in English? What do you think the biggest trap? The answer is to write translation-based English papers. And this is what I mean, TBE, translation-based English. Now, why people would write translation-based English? Well, it is hard to write in English as a non-native speaker, like you and me. Second, it is even harder to write academic papers in English within a specific discipline. Third, it is easy nowadays to produce an academic paper based on a Chinese paper. So all you have to do is write the Chinese first and then translate this into English. And of course, it is even easier than before to find a web device to do the translation online. And you can do the translation within seconds. How wonderful that is, that your paper is completed within seconds based on your Chinese paper. Then the conclusion is the temptation of TBE, translation-based English writing, is huge. It's huge. That's the good news. And here are some of the devices that you can find online. And then to tell the truth, I myself also use this translation devices online every now and then. Because it's quick, it's easy, it's efficient. But I need to tell you 3 features of TBE papers you have to be keenly aware. First, each sentence may look fine, but when these sentences are put together, they look awkward, they look strange, they look odd. Second, each paragraph could look odd and does not have the lexical cohesiveness and the semantic precision a good academic paper should have. And thirdly, each part or section does not follow the formulaic expectations of a standard academic journal within its own discipline. And it was telling us, basically, your translation-based English writing is odd, is bad, is not so much accountable. But why you cannot find it? Because you're a non-native speaker. You think the translation is already good enough. Please ask a native speaker to have a look. They all point out a hell lot of problems for your writing. And let's give an example. Let's give an example of TBE writing. Let's look at this passage. Considering the potential consequences, researchers must explore what factors cause PSU. Studies found that individuals want to elevate negative emotion through smartphones. Anxiety and depression have been proven to be moderately or slightly correlated with severity of PSU. Furthermore, some studies found that loneliness, shyness, boredom proneness, and envy were also cause of PSU. We think loneliness may be a critical factor in PSU. What's more, these aforementioned psychological impairments among adolescents could be more severe. Gary said feelings of loneliness are usually most intense in adolescence, and the younger the age, the higher the level PSU. Considering that few studies have explored effects of loneliness on PSU alone, and that the risk of PSU is greatest among adolescents, we propose that loneliness may predict problematic smartphone use among adolescents. Adolescents with high level of loneliness want to satisfy their social desires in virtual space, which leads to their dependence on smartphone. Okay, I could stop here. Now you have read the passage. What's your impression of it? Well, here is my impression. It has many problems to start with. First, the subject of the passage keeps jumping from one topic to another. And second, the key concept is not defined at the beginning, because this is about pathological smartphone use, and you should define the concept first. And thirdly, abbreviation is used from the beginning. I mean, PSU. Nobody knows what PSU is. This is the typical lack of reader awareness. You think everybody knows what it is. Actually, when people read the article the first time, they don't know. Fourth, the sentences are not cohesive. You can see the passive and active voice keeps changing, and the subject jumps from fact observation to concept discussion. And the fifth, the goals of the study are presented too suddenly. Let's talk about they're going to do a study based on just these few descriptions. And the sixth, there was no reader awareness in the passage in many ways. So you think this is a good passage, but in my mind, it's not. And this is a typical of what I described in the beginning of the TBE writing. Each sentence is fine, but you put the sentences together, they look odd. And when you submit a paper like this, you think, oh, I've done beautiful writing. But in the mind of the editor or reviewers, this article needs to be edited, to say the least. To tell you the truth, a lot of my young colleagues and students submit their manuscripts to different academic journals, and they got an instant rejection. And they got frustrated. My paper, I spent so much effort and get so much people to do it for me, and it was instantly rejected. Why? Now you know why. Because it does not follow the logic. It does not have the elegance of academic writing it should have. So, you need to be aware. Now, having said this, I revised this, and see, this is my revision. My revision reads like this. Previous studies found that individuals wanted to elevate negative emotions through smartphones. Anxiety and depression have been proven to contribute to severity of PSU. Previous studies also found that loneliness, shyness, boredom, proneness, and envy all predicted PSU. Besides, loneliness might predict problematic smartphone use among adolescents as well. Adolescents with high level of loneliness may want to satisfy the social desire in virtual space, which leads to dependence on smartphone. And this needs to be substantiated with further references. However, adolescents who focus on virtual social relationship are at risk of being socially isolated, which may cause a vicious circle. Therefore, loneliness could be an important predictor of PSU among adolescents. Now, this is my proposed revisions. Now, having said this, what are the features of my revisions? The first, the subject of passage remains constant. It's always smartphone or PSU. Second, the problems of PSU are presented in parallel forms rather than jump from unrelated sentence of one to another. And thirdly, sentences are more cohesive. It means they go together more. And fourthly, the goals of study are not presented yet. It has to be presented later. Now, to tell the truth, I have done a lot of revisions for my young colleagues and for my students. And I always tell them that you have to be aware of the TBE writing, however strong the temptation is. So, what should we do? Be aware. Be aware of what? Please be aware the 10 big problems with writing translation-based English academic papers. First, there was a lack of coherent structure in TBE papers. Second, there was a lack of cohesive style in TBE papers. Third, there was a lack of sentence precision in TBE papers. Fourth, there was a lack of research gap identification in TBE papers. Fifth, there was a lack of formulaic writing awareness in TBE papers. Sixth, there was a lack of reader awareness in TBE papers. Seventh, there was a lack of lexical and parallel expressiveness in TBE papers. Eighth, there was a lack of word precision in TBE papers. Ninth, there was a lack of citation precision in TBE papers. And 10th, there's a lack of academic voice and identity in TBE papers. I hope everyone, having heard my talk, next time when I write English academic papers, please be aware of these problems. Do not count totally on translation devices to write a good paper based on your Chinese thinking or Chinese paper first. As I told you, I myself also used translation devices every now and then, but I would do heavy revision. I would do a lot of revisions after I used the translation device. I would never submit the translation directly. So that's the issue. Okay, let's look at another example. Read the following passage. According to the 46th Statistical Report on the Development of Internet in China, as of June 2020, the total number of Internet users aged under 19 in China is up to 172 million. With the widespread of smartphone, fabbing, which is the portmanteau of the words phone and snubbing, has become an emerging social phenomenon. It is used to describe the interruption of social interactions caused by smartphone use. People look down at their mobile phones and ignore their family or friends. Thus, fabbing can be perceived as a kind of social exclusion and interpersonal neglect. Farming has brought a lot of negative effects to human life. For example, farming can damage the relationship satisfaction between partners. It can also threaten basic psychological needs, especially the sense of belonging, and blah, blah, blah. Okay, here is the passage. We do see the problem in the passage. And here are my observations of the problems with the above passage. First, the subject of the passage keeps it changing. In fact, it's not that they cannot change, it's just that the subject, if you talk about farming, or you talk about the overuse of smartphone in China, you stay that for a while, rather than you just jump from one sentence or one topic to another and keeps jump back and forth. Secondly, the key concept is not brought up at the beginning. Now we should know what farming is before you talk about other things. This is my expectation. This is my formulaic expectation of a standard academic journal. Third, the key concept is awkwardly defined. It was defined, but the language does not look good. And fourth, the problems with farming are awkwardly presented. So I know what you talk about, but the language does not appeal to me, or does not attract my attention. So that's the problem. And here is my revision of the passage. Let's have a look. Farming is the portmanteau of the words phone and stubbing, and is defined as the interruption of social interactions caused by mobile phone use. Specifically, people would constantly look down at their mobile phones and ignore their family members or friends. Thus, farming can be perceived as a kind of social exclusion and interpersonal neglect. With the widespread use of smartphones, farming has brought a wide variety of social and interpersonal problems on human life. For example, farming has been reported to bring about damages to relational satisfaction between partners, threaten basic psychological needs, and increase the risks of depression. Blah, blah, blah. And here is my revision. Now, what are the features of my revision? First, the subject of the passage is coherent. It is about farming, and it's about the problems farming. And when I write about farming, I would define the concept using a few sentences, just rather than one. I would use several sentences to define the concept. And I would put up the problems with farming together, rather than keep jumping from one topic to another. Second, the key concept is well defined at the very beginning. Third, the sentences of the passage appear more cohesive. Cohesive means more coherent. They all go together. There was a more parallel description of the related findings or concepts. And fourth, the problems with farming are presented in a parallel phrases. Now here are my suggested revisions. I gave this to the student of mine, and he was really impressed. He never thought that a paper should be written in such a formulaic way or style. And this is the lesson she learned.